Welcome students. In today's class, we are going to discuss about the chemical reactions that are involved in the process of respiration in plants, and we will also see some of the different types of respiration that a plant part can do in this chapter. What is respiration? Is respiration just the mechanical process of breathing in oxygen and breathing out carbon dioxide? No, it is a bit more elaborate process and a bit more chemical process that is involved in the whole process of respiration. The mechanical process or the muscular process of breathing is just a part of respiration and not the whole part. The respiration term encompasses both the mechanical process of breathing in oxygen and breathing out carbon dioxide, and also it includes the chemical breakdown of glucose by utilizing oxygen to produce energy in the form of ATP. So let's look into it in a little bit of more details. So whatever food we are eating, that is in the form of glucose, or that is turned into glucose in our body, or it is turned into starch or glycogen. That is, the stored form of food is always carbohydrate. Now, this form of food or carbohydrate is broken down or is oxidized by the process of oxidation, that is in presence of oxygen, to produce energy. Now, energy is in the form of heat energy as well as the chemical energy, which is ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate. Now, why do we need the energy? We need the energy for doing various life processes like reproduction, food hunting, escaping from the predators, making some new cells of our body, repairing the wounded cells of our body, etc. So respiration is a process, it is a chemical process by which the food that we intake is oxidized to produce energy in the form of ATP, which energy is utilized by us to perform the various life processes. Now, if we want to represent the chemical processes of respiration by a chemical reaction, it will be like this. C6H12O6, which is the chemical formula of glucose, it is oxidized in presence of oxygen. So obviously oxygen will be needed. 6 molecules of oxygen is needed, and the products will be CO2 is produced. That CO2 is only exhaled by the exhaling air. Water is produced, 6 molecules of water is produced, and energy is produced in terms of both heat energy and chemical energy, that is ATP. Now this reaction is not just happening in this simple chemical reaction or chemical equation that I have presented, but these are some chemical reactions that are happening in a series of steps. Now first set of reaction, there are two sets of reaction in respiration. The first set of reaction is called glycolysis, which includes the chemical conversion of glucose into pyruvate. And this is happening in the cytoplasm of every cell of our body. The second set of reaction or the second series of reaction of respiration is called Krebs cycle. And this Krebs cycle includes, or citric acid cycle it is also called, it includes the chemical conversion of pyruvate into carbon dioxide, water and energy. And this is taking place in every mitochondria of every cell. That is why we call the mitochondria as the powerhouse of the cell. All of the steps of respiration, maybe it is a step of glycolysis or may it be a step of Krebs cycle, all of them are regulated by different sets of enzymes. So in the whole process of respiration, there is a particular enzyme for each particular step. The enzymes are helping the chemical reaction to occur in a faster rate and in a more efficient process. So energy that is being liberated is partly in the form of heat and is partly in the chemical form, that is ATP. Now if I am considering 1 mole of glucose or 1 molecule of glucose, that is C6H12O6, if that glucose is completely broken down in the presence of oxygen, that is the whole reactions of glycolysis and Krebs cycle has been completed, then 38 ATP molecules will be produced. So for energy production that is required for the whole body to function normally, we need a lot of ATP molecules, and that's why we need a lot of glucose molecules in our body as well. That is why we need to eat food in a continuous manner, so that the sufficient production and sufficient supply of ATP is never hindered. So when the energy is needed by the body, the ATP molecules are converted into ADP. ATP is adenosine triphosphate and ADP is adenosine diphosphate. So whenever energy is needed by some part, like some muscle is moving, like I am doing exercise or something, so my muscles are needing the energy. So in the muscle tissues or muscle cells, the ATP that is present, it will get converted into ADP. So a phosphate molecule will be removed, so it will be converted into ADP. Now when enough energy or enough glucose molecule is there, enough glucose molecule will be present, so ADP will be again converted into ATP, so that we can store that as the energy currency. So this whole cyclical process of conversion of ATP into ADP when energy is needed by cell, and ADP into ATP when energy is needed from food, is happening in a cyclical and continuous manner. In the first picture, the whole process of respiration has been presented. So first step is glycolysis, where glucose is being converted into pyruvate, and in this process only 2 ATP molecules are produced, and then the pyruvate goes into the Krebs cycle, where the pyruvate is completely oxidized to produce carbon dioxide, water and ATP. Here 36 ATP molecules are produced. So the glycolysis step is only producing very little amount of energy, which is 2 ATP molecule, and the most of the energy is produced by the Krebs cycle reaction, which is 36 ATP molecule. So 36 plus 2, total 38 ATP molecules are produced. Now if oxygen is not present, then incomplete oxidation of glucose happens, and that is called anaerobic respiration or fermentation, which we will discuss later in detail. In the second picture, we can see that the cell is there, and inside the cell 2 parts are marked: the cytosol, that is the cytoplasm, and the mitochondria. Now food is taken by us, and oxygen is also inhaled by the process of breathing. So oxygen is available, food is available, and inside the cell, in the cytoplasm, glucose is being converted to pyruvic acid through the process of glycolysis, which is the first step. And then the pyruvic acid is going inside the mitochondria, where Krebs cycle is happening and production of energy is there, and carbon dioxide and water is also produced. So the second picture is depicting the whole process of respiration in a diagrammatic manner. Now we are going to discuss about the 2 processes called anabolic process and catabolic process. And the process through which it is happening, it might also be called as catabolism and anabolism. So what happens in catabolism and anabolism is that they are antagonistic processes, that is, they are opposite to each other. So anabolism is a biosynthetic process. Synthetic means that something is produced through this process. As we can see in the picture of anabolism, energy is being used, that is, energy is consumed, and there are some smaller units through which they are getting joined together and we are getting a molecule. So with the help of energy, smaller units are joining together to produce something. So that is why it is a biosynthetic process. So anabolism is the set of metabolic pathways or chemical reactions that construct molecules from smaller units. These reactions are requiring energy, that is they are consuming energy, and they are also known as an endergonic process because energy is consumed. Opposite, if we are seeing in contrast, catabolism is a breakdown process. Nothing is being synthesized or nothing is being produced, but whatever is there, it is like breaking down, it is being broken down into smaller substances. So there was the molecule, and the molecule has been broken down into smaller units of its components. And here energy is not being consumed, but energy is produced. So catabolism is the set of metabolic pathways that breaks down molecules into smaller units that are either oxidized to release energy or used in other anabolic reactions. So the products of catabolism are like that. The smaller units might again be used in anabolic process, or they are oxidized to produce the energy. So catabolism and anabolism are, one is a biosynthetic process and another is a breakdown process. Now if we are seeing the respiration, in respiration glucose is broken down to produce energy. So it is a catabolic process. But if we are seeing photosynthesis, in photosynthesis water, carbon dioxide and solar energy from the sun is being combined together to produce a molecule which is glucose. So it is an anabolic process. Now we are going to talk about the two types of respiration that are present in plant. The first one and the dominant one is the aerobic respiration. That is all plant parts 99% of the times respire aerobically, that is in the presence of oxygen. And aerobic respiration means that the glucose is completely oxidized to produce carbon dioxide and water. So if we are representing it through a reaction, it is like this. Glucose is completely oxidized in the presence of oxygen. Energy is released in the form of either ATP or heat or both into carbon dioxide and water. And aerobic means that it occurs only in the presence of oxygen, and carbon dioxide and water is produced as the end product. So it is the whole process of glucose oxidation, that is glycolysis and Krebs cycle. When both glycolysis and Krebs cycle is completed, then only the complete oxidation of glucose happens. So in aerobic respiration, both cytosol and mitochondria is involved. In cytosol, glucose is converted into pyruvate through glycolysis, and in mitochondria, pyruvate is converted into carbon dioxide and water and ATP, and that entails the whole process of aerobic respiration. Some parts of the plant like the fruit or the seed at some point of time temporarily might shift into anaerobic respiration mode when oxygen is not properly available or available sufficiently. So anaerobic respiration is not a common process or not a process that the plant normally does. But anaerobic respiration is a temporary process which may be adapted by some plant or some plant parts under certain unfavorable conditions. Now anaerobic respiration can only happen for few days. It cannot be like happening for a continuous time. If for a continuous period of time oxygen is unavailable, then for the first few days anaerobic respiration can happen. But after that, if oxygen is not available, that plant part will eventually die. So anaerobic respiration is a temporary solution. It is not a permanent one. So the main difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration is that in anaerobic respiration, incomplete breakdown of glucose or incomplete oxidation of glucose happens. and it is happening in absence of oxygen. So what is incomplete breakdown of glucose? Here only glycolysis is happening, that is conversion of glucose to pyruvate is happening. Okay, and then the pyruvate does not enter into the TCA cycle or the citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle. Instead of that, it is turned into, chemically it is turned into either lactate or ethyl alcohol or ethanol, and that process is called fermentation. So in anaerobic respiration, the Krebs cycle, that is conversion of pyruvate into CO2, water and energy, that process is absent. Instead, pyruvate is converted into lactate and ethanol, and also a little bit of carbon dioxide is produced, and this is called fermentation. And as we have seen, the main amount of energy, that is 36 ATP molecule, was produced in the TCA cycle. In glycolysis, only 2 molecules of ATP will be produced. So in anaerobic respiration, since only glycolysis is happening, very little amount of energy is released, just 2 molecules of ATP, in contrast with 38 molecules of ATP in aerobic respiration. And the end products are also different, because here either ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide is produced or lactate is produced. So that is anaerobic respiration.